Avowed is a fascinating game to me because I can't think of many titles that have generated so little excitement. Normally when I see what I consider to be a mediocre game, there will be those voices out there, the common sense, that will say, hey, this looks mediocre, don't get hyped by this. But you'll still normally have the fanboys, the people foaming at the mouth going, oh, it's going to be the greatest thing ever, don't listen to the haters. But I can't find those people this time. It's very difficult to find anyone who is enthusiastic about this game. There's not really any Avowed communities, not even necessarily Obsidian communities who are really pumping up this game. The only, I suppose, exception is maybe Xbox-related boards, where they will say things like, oh, don't discredit Avowed, it's going to be good, don't listen to people. They're just Sony ponies. They're just haters of Xbox. That's all that is. But those people aren't really defending Avowed. They're just sucking up to anything Xbox-related. If it's published by Microsoft, published by Xbox, they'll be talking it up, but it has basically nothing to do with the game itself. So they'll say anything is good if it's got the Microsoft label on it. But in terms of people actually looking at Avowed, what it's doing, the trailers, the talk coming out from Obsidian, such as companions maybe not having that much reactivity, the talk about there being no classes, no one's really praising that stuff. You'll see the odd comment, but there's no groups of people who are saying, yes, this is making the game even better, it's incredible. Most people are disappointed at the news, and at best they're making excuses like, oh, it's not going to be that bad, I'm sure we can live with these little changes. So Obsidian just seem to have gone out of their way to make this a disappointment. They've sort of said, hey, are you excited about our game? Please don't be, because here's a list of problems with it. Here's a list of things we've added in or removed that are going to make this game mediocre, pale in comparison to games like Baldur's Gate 3. So it's fascinating, but it is also a little bit sad, because I was kind of hoping getting into 2024 there'd be more RPGs to get excited about. There are in the indie space, but in AAA it's slim pickings to some degree. There's Dragon's Dogma 2, maybe there's some others I'm forgetting, but a lot of the bigger ones, I guess, like Avowed, they seem to be missing the mark. So I want to look at a few communities, a few RPG-related communities, to see what they think about this game, and to give some examples of people just not being excited at all. We'll start with the RPG Codex, as the name suggests, big on RPGs, and this user represents a lot of people. There are heaps of comments like this. The game looks absolute trash, referring to Avowed. Don't know who they are designing the game for exactly. Certainly not for the RPG crowd, with the lack of classes, races. I think there's only like 2 races you can pick from, and the companion approval system. And that's related to them saying that you can recruit a few people. I'm pretty sure there's 4 companions, because in one of the Obsidian interviews, they talked about the 2 companions in the trailers, and I think it was the director, Patel, who said that there was a couple more. Maybe they were just picking a random word to use, but it was interesting they said a couple meaning 2. So I think there might be 4 companions, and you can do quests. There's like one, probably one proper quest per companion, but it's not as if they will really react to your choices and they'll leave the party or the group or something if they don't like you. There's not really any of that. There'll be maybe a quest per companion, and I think that's going to really be about it. It will not be for the romance, I don't know if I can say that word, we'll say folks, romance folks and sex-starved whales, either with lack of romances. It will not be for the graphics horse crowd with their abysmal plastic cartoonish graphics. It's kind of the thing with Unreal 5. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I always see these remakes of like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time in Unreal 5, and sure, at a technical level it looks good, but all the passion's gone, it feels a bit plasticky. And that's how Avowed feels to me. It's not really a believable fantasy world, even though it's the Pillars of Eternity universe. Something about it does feel plastic. Cartoonish, it's maybe not the right word to describe it, but I get what he means. It just feels fake. It's not very immersive. It's not for the combat folks either, with that floaty shit combat that they showed off. The combat just doesn't look good. Even if it's technically sound and maybe it's fun when you get into it, it just doesn't look fun at all. When they showed it off in trailers, it just looks really clunky and slow. Basically the worst of RPGs and the worst of action games. It seemed like they didn't want to commit to either. They didn't want to make a full-fledged action game which had really sort of fast, interesting combat, but they were also scared to commit to RPG combat, like, say, a Baldur's Gate for instance, with turn-based combat. They thought, no, if we go that route, then we'll alienate the casual fans. So how about we combine it? It's not going to be full action combat, but we'll basically remove anything that could be interesting so that it still has something for the traditional RPG players. And what I normally find is that when you try and appeal to everyone, you basically master at nothing. And that's what Avowed feels like. It's just maybe a jack of all trades, master of absolutely none. You could apply that to a lot of recent Obsidian games like the Outer Worlds. And then he finishes, so it begs the question, who is this game designed for? And I just really think that Avowed was greenlit in a time where there weren't many RPGs in the mainstream, and Obsidian thought, this is what we need to do. We make a game that's not really for RPG players. It can appeal to the masses, but anyone will just buy it because they can't get that experience anywhere else. What I mean by that is, back when the Outer Worlds released, it was at the same time as Fallout 76. And the marketing for the Outer Worlds was basically, hey, this is a single-player RPG. It's not some live service, something like a multiplayer title, such as Fallout 76. So the selling point was meant to be, hey, play this, because at least it's not as bad as everything else coming out, right? It wasn't like they were really selling the Outer Worlds as this masterpiece that you should play. Baldur's Gate 3 was the opposite, because it doesn't have the bullshit, but it's also a great game. It's not like it's just, yeah, the game's okay, but thank God it doesn't have microtransactions. In fact, even if Baldur's Gate 3 had, say, cosmetic microtransactions, there was a big store purely for cosmetics, it would absolutely suck. I may not even have bought it, but I still think that people would be saying it is a great game fundamentally. Thank God that's not the case, not defending microtransactions at all. I'm just saying that it would still be a good game in terms of its content, what's going on, even if it had some store in there. Whereas the Outer Worlds, if that had microtransactions, I think people would be saying, don't go near this piece of shit. There's nothing redeeming about it. Plus, it has microtransactions. So Obsidian, I think, were just playing it safe. They thought if they just released an RPG without the monetization nonsense, people would be interested, but they learned that no, you actually have to make a good game as well. No predatory monetization, that's not enough. That is the bare minimum for gamers in 2024. And Avowed has just been in development for too long. It's been like 4, 5, 6 years, and it's just going to release at a time where it's outdated. I don't mean that releasing a classic RPG is outdated, but just the idea that you can release a half RPG that's action combat, doesn't really have much to it, it's really dumbed down. Gamers don't want that anymore. They want a proper RPG. Baldur's Gate proves it. This is part of the reason that no one is interested in Avowed. So who has the game been designed for? In 2024, basically no one. No one's going to care about this. And we've got other ones here. This is an Avowed Reddit community. So this is where I thought I might find the fanboys, but there's very few of them. So you've got some article here that has probably been AI generated. It just sounds stupid. Avowed's commitment to ubiquitous player choice could make it 2024 standout RPG. At Obsidian, it's your world, your way, right? I mean, it sounds like a marketing piece. And if it is the standout RPG, it must be a very low bar. I'd be thinking the rest of the year must suck. I hope that's not the case. But having a look through, I mean, one of the top comments here is someone saying, I don't really feel like ubiquitous player choice is a justifiable claim at this point. We haven't seen or heard enough. Some of what we have heard gives the opposite impression. And this is the general feeling across the entire Avowed community. No one's really pumped. And I do like to see that people are saying we haven't seen or heard enough, because how many times have we had these games that get hyped to the moon and back even though we haven't seen all that much at all? And when people say something like this in the past, people will go, oh, you're a hater, you're just trying to be negative, don't listen to this person, we're pumped, we're positive, this is a good thing. It's fortunate that that's not really happening anymore. People are skeptical, they've been let down so many times, and it seems this is now the common sense opinion. If you're not already sort of a revered developer in the sense that you've just released a lot of good games, for instance, if Larian announces a new game, people are going to be pumped. Same with From Software, people trust them. But Obsidian just haven't really released anything outstanding for some time, so people are understandably skeptical. You're only really as good as your last game, let's be honest. So it's nice to see this, and just another example, there's many of them here that no one is pumped about Avowed at all. It looks middling, and it probably is going to be. If they can't get people excited before release, I'd be very surprised if the game is going to be any different. Now, I mentioned there is the odd shill post, but it's usually shot down pretty quickly. So, for instance, this article about how Avowed is going classless, you basically use skill trees. You can't actually pick a class at the start of the game. Someone says something really generic. Again, it could be AI generated. Whatever feels good. Excited to see what Obsidian can do with first-person fantasy. It sounds like a marketing person. But they're very quickly shot down with someone saying, honestly, I just watched the gameplay reveal from last week's show, and the combat kind of looked a little janky. Had they commented on that at all? If they are still working on animation or something? Well, the game is coming out this year, so even if they're still working on it, I don't know. I always tend to say, if they've been willing to show how bad it looks now, it's probably not going to get that much better, because surely they could have got the animations right for a reveal, given they were just showing little snippets. We didn't see, like, 30 minutes of uninterrupted gameplay. It was literally little snippets here and there. They chose to share that with us. They seemed confident. They didn't really comment on the animations and suggest that they were still working on them. So my inclination is to think that this is it. So if you think the animations look stupid, unless they show later that they've improved them, I would just assume that is going to be it. Don't just buy it thinking it's all going to be fixed. And many people are saying this. This is an Xbox community. No one's really sold on Avowed. And if we continue here, there was this weird exchange. This is again an Xbox community talking about Avowed. And someone says the combat doesn't look as fluid as I had hoped. I'll still give it a playthrough. Easy to say when it's on Game Pass. When people talk about Game Pass tier or Game Pass shovelware, Avowed's a perfect example. No one wants to spend any real money on it, pay full price. Maybe if it's on sub for $15, some of these people will play it. So that is Game Pass at work there. Fantastic stuff for the industry. Someone says, I'm hoping the combat will get cleaned up a bit before release, just like the visuals got cleaned up from last year. Well, I mean, it didn't look that good last year. People are praising it now, but again, the animations look shoddy. They look worse than games I've seen developed by one person that are out there in the indie scene, so I don't know about that. But this comment, this really stood out. Someone says the visuals always look like this if you look at other footage they showed that wasn't from the Summer Showcase trailer. And then this bit is just laughable. They say the devs were pretty vocal about how the company that produced the trailer fucked up the export of the trailer. Now, I didn't hear about that. I don't know if this is actually true. But if it is, this is like the ultimate excuse, trying to escape accountability. You produced the game, some company, not you, supposedly did the trailer, and you're blaming them for your game looking like shit? What? I've never heard this before. It went out there in an Xbox showcase. It's not like some weird publisher stuffed you around. Like, this is Microsoft, who Obsidian have praised. Oh, now we can make the games of our dreams. And you're blaming some third party, it sounds like, for why your game looked terrible. What about this time? Why do the animations, the combat, why does everything simply look bad? Is there an excuse for that as well? Oh, it wasn't us, it was other people. Maybe the game director will say that because she was put on the project after a lot of people had already left. I mean, the game has been in development hell. It's had heaps of directors. So maybe if Kerry Patel, the game director, said that, maybe that actually is a realistic excuse. There's been so many game directors, that's why the game sucks. All right, I might buy that, but I'm certainly not buying this excuse. So with everyone basically shitting on the game, I just wanted to end on this because it seems like Obsidian, Microsoft, they've tried to sort of change the narrative a little bit around Avowed because it was very much billed originally as being Obsidian's first AAA RPG. And like it says here, it's when everyone got the idea it was going to be like a Skyrim. That wasn't just the players making up their own expectations. This is something that kind of did the rounds. So for instance, what you need to know, Avowed is a AAA RPG by Obsidian that was revealed in 2020. So back around 2020, that was when they were self-proclaiming that Avowed was a AAA RPG. Avowed was originally pitched as Obsidian's take on Skyrim, but production pivoted to be more focused on a more traditional RPG delivery as opposed to a Bethesda brand sandbox style gameplay. Now, I've maybe said before that I think it's fine if Avowed originally was just going to be hub worlds. I don't need every game to be an open world. There's plenty of downsides, especially in the modern gaming scene. However, it's just the idea that they were selling people on it being the next Skyrim, and then they sort of walked that back. I can't remember if Obsidian said it themselves, but I just feel like the marketing around it was that it was going to be like a Skyrim. That is why people are disappointed. It's not, oh, every game's got to be Skyrim. It's, you said one thing, and now you're doing another. You've kind of walked back expectations. Now, around that time, a lot of other articles were doing the rounds. So, for instance, here, Avowed, Obsidian's big AAA RPG game, with VP of Xbox Game Studios Matt Booty saying, "This is Obsidian at their best." Another article, "It's the first AAA RPG from the genre masters at Obsidian," referring to Avowed. So during the announcement, all this talk about it being a AAA game. However, now the narrative is shifting. So this poster who's shared all this info about how previously Avowed was sold as being this huge AAA game, they say here, and I think this is accurate, now that the gameplay footage is out for all of us to see, I believe a lot of folks and journalists will gradually shift the narrative and say that Avowed was always going to be a smaller scale AA project. And I'm kind of seeing that a lot. They're trying to imply it was always meant to just be like the Outer Worlds, rather than be honest and admit that the game was scaled back for development reasons. And it's pretty clear this all happened because of the development hell. It's gone through heaps of directors. It was originally sold as a Skyrim-like huge sprawling world. Obsidian probably weren't up to it. Changed directors, changed teams, new people had to come in to work on it. Now it's been in development for 5 or 6 years. They finally present it to us, and it looks like crap. No one is excited. Most people who play it, it's probably going to be on Game Pass. I can't see heaps and heaps of people spending money on it. Maybe I'll give it a try just so I can sort of show everyone what it looks like. But outside of that, I don't think many people are going to be too interested. It looks like it could be a fail. And given Microsoft are now showing their hand, they've started to shut down studios or at least teams at Activision Blizzard. They're firing people. I don't know what's going to happen to Obsidian. I don't want them to fail. I'm talking about this because I want them to get better, but it's not looking very good given the lack of excitement around this. We'll see what happens. It's going to release, it seems like, before the end of the year. I can't see a delay happening, but it probably needs one if it's going to be anything but mediocre. So we'll just have to see. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.